Missing plane described as a deliberate act. China eases exchange rate controls. And locally, fresh debate over free TV licensing.
Good evening. Investigators now believe the missing Malaysia Airlines jet had its communications and tracking systems deliberately disabled, then continued to fly for nearly 7 hours. It means flight MH370 with 239 people on board could have ended up anywhere from the Indian Ocean to Central Asia. Alan Buckner has our top story tonight.
After days of speculation about the missing aircraft, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak said today several different international investigative bodies arrived at the same conclusion. He said the communication system on MH370 was deliberately disabled between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace less than an hour after takeoff.
The Royal Malaysian Air Force primary radar data showed that an aircraft which was believed but not confirmed to be MH370 did indeed turn back. It then flew in a westerly direction back over Peninsular Malaysia before turning northwest.
Najib said authorities are now trying to trace the jet from across two possible corridors. A northern corridor from Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan through northern Thailand, and a southern corridor from Indonesia to the southern Indian Ocean. He said the search operation in the South China Sea is now over.
Despite media reports that the plane was hijacked, I wish to be very clear. We are still investigating all possibilities as to what caused MH370 to deviate from its original flight path.
Investigators will now step up background checks of the people aboard the plane, including the pilots, for any links to terrorist organizations.
Clearly, the search for MH370 has entered a new phase. Over the last 7 days, we have followed every lead and looked into every possibility. For the families and friends of those involved, we hope this new information brings us one step closer to finding the plane.
In Beijing, for families of many of those aboard MH370, there is only hope. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
The People's Bank of China says it'll widen the yuan's daily trading band to 2% as Beijing seeks to add more flexibility to try to make the RMB more responsive to market forces. From Monday, officials say the exchange rate will be allowed to rise or fall 2% from a daily midpoint rate set each morning by the central bank. The PBOC doubled the trading band to 1% in April 2012. The move was expected given Beijing had been intervening in the currency markets in recent weeks in a bid to counter speculative moves of a one-way appreciation.
Here in Hong Kong, debate is heating up over the application by the two free-to-air TV stations to renew their licences. There are now calls for the Communications Authority to consider imposing additional terms for the stations to try to improve the quality of their programmes. Rani Santani reports.
Both TVB and ATV came under fire at the LegCo Information Technology and Broadcasting panel today.
ATV programs are particularly bad. People are so angry that sometimes they want to smash the TV set, and people are not satisfied with the TVB standard.
What the public is most concerned or not happy with ATV is the quality and also rerun of programs, and TVB has no competition for a long time, and therefore the quality of its programs has been coming down.
But ATV claims it has been making improvements and increasing the quality and quantity of its locally produced programs. TVB was also criticized for product placement on its drama shows. A top TVB executive insists product placement is very common in overseas countries.
So very often when such products are shown in a program, they are solely for the purpose of that particular drama. People would say that we have actually inserted this commercial, or this is a product placement. So there is a lot of room for negotiation or discussion with the CA.
Lawmakers also accused the management of both stations of interfering with their news departments.
Apparently, you have given a blacklist to your news department saying that certain people should not be interviewed. Our station has never interfered with the operation of the news department. I've allowed the news department a free hand in running its business. We have never interfered with the editorial independence of our news department. When I watch our news programs, I often saw the face of Emily Lau. So her face appears in our programs very often. So nobody would criticize us for not allowing anybody to appear in our programs.
The public consultation exercise on the renewal of TVB and ATV's licenses will end on April 3rd. The Communications Authority says it will consider all views and suggestions before submitting its recommendations to the CE and Council. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
The Office of the Communications Authority has refuted Hong Kong Television Network Chairman Ricky Wong's claims that it has ignored letters sent by him. Meanwhile, an IT expert we spoke to believes the government should look into regulating mobile TV content instead of TV transmissions because of advancing technology. The authority said it has tried to discuss with Ricky Wong since January on how to provide mobile TV services without breaking the law. But he's insisted on only using the DTMB standard, which could be received via public antenna in the same way as free-to-air TV channels. The authority said it's offered to meet for more discussions, but said Wong was the one who turned them down and pursued the matter legally, forcing the authority to hand over correspondence to its lawyers.
What we received were consecutively a total of 4 letters from the solicitors representing the operator. Also note that Mr. Wong had said repeatedly that it is in his intention to go to the court and apply for a JR. If that really takes place, then the whole matter will be escalated to the judicial level, and we would respond accordingly.
The HKTV chairman earlier also complained that the authority had set a trap for him by recommending him to take on European mobile TV signal standard DVB-H. TV sets are unable to receive DVB-H signals at the moment, but Wong said this may change in the near future as technology advances, which may lead to his company breaking the law. Wong has requested the authority to promise not to charge him for breaking the law if that happens. Lee said today it was unheard of for a licensee to demand that the regulator promise not to penalize him. In response, Wong has issued a statement reiterating that it's technically impossible to meet what he described as contradicting broadcasting ordinance requirements and mobile TV licensing conditions at the same time. Meanwhile, an IT expert told TVB News today that it's no longer useful to regulate transmitted signals given the advancing technology.
The mobile TV signal is everywhere. So it can get through your window, but not just only from the public antenna system. So I think it's better to govern the content of the mobile TV. I'm not saying that we should govern everything on the internet, but mobile TV license is governed by the ordinance. So I think it's better we have to focus and look into govern the contents provided by the mobile TV provider instead of looking at how many households can receive the signal. I think that is pretty outdated.
Turning overseas again, time is quickly running out for diplomatic efforts in the battle for Crimea. Russia and the United States have failed to find common ground in a last-ditch attempt at finding a peaceful resolution to the crisis in the Ukrainian region. James Aiken has more on what's next, one day before the referendum on Crimea's political future.
Days of international maneuvering and diplomatic activity led to a 6-hour meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State and the Russian foreign minister. But when it was over, little had been achieved.
After much discussion, the foreign minister made it clear that President Putin is not prepared to make any decision regarding Ukraine until after the referendum on Sunday.
With the referendum now certain to go ahead, Kerry said much depends on Russia's next move. If Russia's parliament ratifies the vote, Kerry said that would amount to a backdoor annexation of Crimea, with consequences.
We don't say that as a threat. We say that as a direct consequence of the choices that Russia may or may not choose to make here.
The UN Security Council is due to vote on a resolution that would declare the referendum invalid. But with a Russian veto virtually certain, the only thing the resolution might achieve is a demonstration of the impending extent of Russian isolation. Meanwhile, some pro-Ukrainian activists are already preparing for life after the referendum. Supporters of the new Ukrainian government have come up with a campaign to encourage a boycott of Russian goods. In Crimea, a sense of desperation is setting in among pro-Ukrainian supporters.
Putin, go home! We want peace in our country! Go home with your soldiers! Not referendum, no!
Security is tight in the Crimean capital, Simferopol, with preparations for the referendum in full swing. Voters will have to pick between joining Russia or adopting an earlier constitution that described Crimea as sovereign. Moment of truth, reads the headline in this newspaper. With pro-Russian militiamen and Russian troops firmly in control on the streets, it seems there is little doubt that the separatist forces will get the pro-Russian result they seek. James Aiken, TVB News.
A Paris court has delivered France's first conviction for genocide, sentencing Rwanda's former intelligence chief to 25 years in prison over the 1994 killings of at least 500,000 people in the African country. The landmark trial of 54-year-old Pascal Simbikangwa sets off what could be the first of dozens of French trials into one of the 20th century's greatest atrocities 2 decades after it happened. After a 5.5-week trial, he was found guilty of genocide and complicity to crimes against humanity. One of his defense lawyers said the verdict was unfair and called the process a political trial.
And still to come on the news tonight. Rita Fan says some don't have to see universal suffrage here. Hong Kong new pollster denies his surveys are misleading. And it's the end of the road for Nicholas Anelka at West Brom.